Taiwan in speaking about cycling. You have one of the world's best cycle trade shows. You've got an excellent bicycle sharing system called YouBike, and much of the global industry is actually based here. But I'm sure you would all agree that there's perhaps still room for improvement in cycling infrastructure in Taiwan. And if we were to close our eyes for a second and dream of what would be perfect cycling conditions on all of our streets, then it might look like this. And that means having good safe separation from the mixed traffic, having nice, clear, legible signage, having really professional materials and beautiful landscaping. But if this is the dream, much of the reality in the Asia-Pacific region is a bit of a nightmare. Can anybody spot the design problem with this cycleway in Bangkok? You don't want to be going too rapidly there. Okay, on the left is a cycleway. It's a nice sign, but, and despite the fact that I'm right now speaking about infrastructure, we can't just talk about infrastructure. In this case, it's also about enforcement and behavior. I'm not sure if this was intended as a cycleway or these were just somebody got a little out of control with some white paint. And this is from Indonesia. They took us out and showed us they were so proud of this cycleway, the yellow line that they painted. But clearly, again, there are some issues. And this is probably better than most, because the reality for most of Asia and Pacific is you have nothing. Now, every day, I bicycle to the Asian Development Bank in Manila. And it's a challenge. And you're out there like that. There's pollution. There's a lot of stress. There's safety issues. But what concerns me most is the only people cycling with me are the only people who don't have a choice. And if we want to be serious about cycling, we have to go after the discretionary users if we really want to build up a base. Road crashes now have become the 5th leading cause of death in our region. Over half of those deaths are not the people behind the wheel. It's the cyclists and pedestrians, over half. We have an epidemic. It's overtaken malaria recently on the list of fatality reasons. And the real bad news is this. For the first time in history, by the end of this decade, the mode share of public transport, walking and cycling will fall below that of cars and motorcycles. And there is nothing, anybody in this room, there's nothing you can do about that. That decision's already been made because there are lag times. So investments today take up to 8-10 years before you see a difference on the ground. Well, while that all sounds very depressing, there are some really bright spots out there. And I'd like to talk through some global examples of people doing big things that have the potential to catalyze real change in favor of the cyclist. And one of the really exciting stories is in London right now. Everyone knows about Boris Bikes, the famous mayor who did his bicycle sharing. Well, they've also created what they call bicycle superhighways. And that is taking infrastructure for cycling very seriously. It is designing a network in the same framework that 20 years ago we used to design highway networks. And that it's the reality that realizing that cyclists need a full network. If it's going to be a viable mode of transport, we need to really get from all of our origins into all of our destinations. And in London, they've done a great job, too, with segregation of the cycle paths from the traffic, and often distinct from the pedestrian path. And they've often used quite poetic justice in a way with financing. Using money from the congestion charge in London actually goes to paying for the bicycle infrastructure. So the cars are paying for the bicycles. That's a good thing. The other big story has been, of course, New York. And you can see from their infrastructure, they also have a very nice sort of buffer zone between, if you see between that cycle path and the cars. And I don't know if you've ever had the misfortune of experiencing being doored, but when you have the parked cars very close to the cycle path, you run a significant risk of injury in case a door suddenly flies open. The other big story, and it's actually started here in the Asia-Pacific region, is what we call greenways. And this is creating a green network throughout your city. They are linear pedestrian and cycling corridors. And it started sort of here about a little over a decade ago. A very bold mayor in Seoul decided to get rid of an elevated highway. This, just a decade ago, was an elevated highway. This is Cheonggyecheon. He decided to bring back the river by which Seoul was actually founded upon. Today, this brings over 50 million tourists a year. It is a cash cow for a city, and nobody has missed the traffic. It has not caused Armageddon on the streets. Now, the big story is Guangzhou. Guangzhou took that idea and went way out there. In 2 years, 2,100 kilometers of greenways. Let me say that again. In 2 years, 2,100 kilometers of greenway. And their greenways are very cycle-focused. This is an earthquake in terms of what is possible. And I think it also speaks volumes about how affordable non-motorized transport is. They were able to do this with a very small budget. 2,100 kilometers for about the price of 1 kilometer of metro. Really spectacular. Well, in other parts of Asia, we're seeing the cyclists and the pedestrians being thrown together. And I just want to remind you that although everybody in this room is a cycling champion, pedestrians are our friends. And whatever we do, we don't want to disadvantage those who elect to walk. And you have good examples where you have visual cues, you have enough space and visual cues to know the separation greatly between the two. But you have other places, particularly what we're seeing in China, where the bicycles are being thrown off the road, and then the e-bikes are being thrown off the road onto the pedestrian paths, and then the scooters are being thrown off the road. This is a pedestrian path. But you have to be brave to walk on this. When I was filming this, I even noticed an elderly couple took almost 2 minutes to cross the footpath. When it takes 2 minutes to cross the footpath, we have failed as a society. The other concept that's out there, particularly in North America and Europe, is the bicycle boulevard, which is taking the other approach, having the bicycles share the road with motorized vehicles, but there are visual cues. So that image on the right is from Spain, and what they do is they have a very strong visual cue to remind motorists that the road belongs to everyone. The thing I stress here, though, in all our projects in Asia Pacific, it's not just about bicycles. We have a range of non-motorized users. So this is a project we have going on right now in Vientiane Shan Lao, and you have a lot of carts. This is actually very near my home in Manila. This is an expressway, and these young boys are out with sort of their own non-motorized contraption on a very, very dangerous roadway. And in much of South Asia, you can see a variety of things happening on non-motorized. And it just, as infrastructure developers, we have to remember to construct in a way that caters to our real audience. If we build something that works for this gentleman, it will also work for that weekend recreational cyclist. But we do need to keep this person in mind. Now, so far I've talked about spatial prioritization. The other area where we're seeing a lot of innovation is colorization. So here's an example from Shanghai where you have a very colorful footpath, and that's good for branding and building awareness. but it's also for safety. Now there is a cost to this, and what I really like are, in many parts of the world, people are being very, very strategic with their use of colorization. So where's the most dangerous point in this image? It's where the cycleway actually has to cross that driveway. And what we're finding is about an 80% reduction in crashes when you have that visual cue. It's a very, very dramatic safety feature at a relatively modest cost. And this then goes into other areas like bicycle boxes, which I really love. It's getting the cyclist into the front of the intersection, allowing them to get across first. And of course, here in Asia, we always have the challenge of enforcement. And what I like about the colorization, if you're in a car and you're sitting in that red or green patch, you start to feel a little nervous. You know you're doing something wrong. So it's these little cues that are actually wonderful for making it work. And this one is what I really like. This is in Hangzhou. And if anyone who's a cyclist, you know when it's hot, in the middle of summer, or when it's raining, the worst part of your trip isn't actually when you're riding, you get that cool breeze going, the life is good, but when you stop at the intersection and that sun is beating down on you, or the torrential rain is beating down on you, that's when you're thinking, maybe cycling's not that great. This is a cover just at the waiting areas at the intersection. Again, low tech, low cost, but to a cyclist, this makes a world of difference. Another concept originally developed in Australia, and now we're seeing spread, is bicycle hubs. And I think one of the previous panelists noted the fact that, okay, you cycle in, but I'm a little bit sweaty, and I don't know if my office colleagues wants to smell me for the rest of the day. If you don't have a shower at work, it's a big, big disadvantage. And the bicycle hub idea is to provide showers and lockers. And if you have a network of these, it starts making bicycling more feasible, because nobody wants helmet hair all day. Now, the other thing, and it's already come up in the session, is occasionally here we have rain. Not just any rain. We're talking typhoons. I think living this past few years in the Philippines, the change has just been phenomenal. Last year, and I think the same was true in Taiwan and probably in Vietnam, I mean, we probably had a typhoon every other week. It was crazy. And how do you continue to cycle in those conditions? I'm going to give you an example of how to try to combine cycle infrastructure with climate resilience.
We're here in downtown Indianapolis on the Indianapolis Cultural Trail, a legacy of Judith Marilyn Glick, to talk about the sustainable features like our stormwater planters and bioswales that are on the trail. And it's appropriate because it's raining today while we're out talking about the stormwater planters. So when it rains, the stormwater is diverted into our stormwater planters, which are filled with a lot of native plants that are made to absorb stormwater so that it slowly percolates down into the stormwater bed, keeping the water out of our combined sewer system, which is a big issue here in Indianapolis and a lot of other major cities. This is actually the first time the city of Indianapolis used stormwater planters on a city right-of-way, on a city street. Something new here, relatively new in the Midwest, when the trail was designed, and the city embraced the technology. The vast majority of the trail has these bioswales, these stormwater planters. They took as much space for stormwater planters as they were able to. They hold a lot of water. It's really fun to come out here in a really big downpour and see how they really just fill all the way up to the top and then slowly percolate down over time. They are designed with a beehive unit, so there is a fail-safe measure in case there is that 100-year storm event where they do overflow, and if that's the case, they do flow into the city's stormwater system. Our stormwater planters and all the landscaping on the trail actually serve as a natural barrier protecting the cyclists and pedestrians from both vehicle traffic and from each other. Some places on the trail is a separated section where the bicyclists have one path of the trail and the pedestrians have the other side. The trail added about 500 trees to our downtown area, not to mention I think about 8 acres of extra green space. Not only is the city saving money by having the water treated on top of the surface so it doesn't go into our combined sewer system, but it is adding to the environment, it's adding to heating our city. It's a great investment, and it really helped us pilot new technology here in Indianapolis.
So you can not only solve your transport issues, but you can use your cycleway to start addressing stormwater issues as well. In terms of the users, for the last few years, I've been working on a bus rapid transit project, a non-motorized project in Jiangxi province in China. And it's funny, over the last few years, I've seen umbrellas just take over cycling in China. And it's really a recent phenomenon, but it goes to the question that was asked earlier. And these umbrellas are quite extraordinary. They're about $3 US. So again, low tech, low cost. But what's brilliant about them, they're not being used just for the rain season. They're actually great for the summer. Now we went and got some. We have a bicycle sharing system at ADB, and we went out and bought some of these umbrellas because I thought the bikes would blow away or something. But I'm actually really surprised. These things are very aerodynamically made. And again, I hear you about the problem with the rain, but there are, if we just put a little effort, we can find very simple solutions. Parking's been mentioned as an issue. If you don't have safe and secure parking, again, that's a vital link in making the trip possible. We have a number of design characteristics that we look for in our bicycle parking facilities. This is one I really like from Perth. First, it's at a rail station, so I like the linkage. It's got great signage, great lighting. I like the U-shaped parking device because it allows you to lock both wheels. Many times we forget that. We come up with very sexy designed bicycle parking facilities that aren't very practical. And this is in Guangzhou. They have a real density issue, so they go with this double-decker design. Again, quite functional. But I really stress that as much as I love bicycle sharing, I also like it when people have their own bike and they feel that motivated. And as a cyclist, it's great to be able to get to the public transport system by bike, but you may still need your bike on the other side of the trip. And that's why allowing in, so there's Copenhagen Metro, Cape Town BRT, you are allowed to put your bike in. We should just make that standard in all our public transport systems. And if our public transports are too crowded, that's an issue we have to address. It's not kicking out the bicycles. I think a lot's been said on bicycle sharing, and I'm not going any further other than to say we are working on that at AEB. We're in a number of cities trying to develop systems. We're also working very much, and interestingly, with the Taiwanese bicycle industry on developing a low-cost, modern pedicab. And for much of the world, particularly in South Asia, in a city like Dhaka, Bangladesh, over half of the trips are made on cyclo-rickshaws. But the rate they're going and the image that attached to them, they won't be around in another decade unless we can intervene today to modernize and improve, both for the sake of the driver, who's spending a lot of calories, and for the passengers. And so we, last year, put together a design charrette, brought in a lot of the top experts from around the world, including from here, and we gave them a task. Can you give me one of these beautiful, beautiful pedicabs we see in Germany and such, but for a lot less money? And this is what they came up with, and we're now going to be piloting this in Dhaka, in Kathmandu, and other cities, and using a lot of technology, but in a relatively simple way. Well, I just want to finish up now by stressing that we have a real challenge. In the time that I'm talking right now, 3,800 people in the Asia-Pacific region will have purchased a car or motorcycle. If you work, or all of us who work on sustainable transport, make no mistake about it, we are losing. We are losing very, very badly every day. By the end of this decade again, some of our modes of transport may not even be around. But the glimmer of hope that I want to offer with this presentation are that there are some simple measures that we can do that make a world of difference to cyclists. And I look forward coming back in 2016 to the VeloCity event here and seeing the world of change that I'm sure is happening in Taipei. Thank you.